Also up on the screen, everybody, I've got the Critical Doxology and Timenergy seminar, which begins in January. And by the time you're watching this video, it's probably already January. Don't worry, you didn't miss much. These are built to allow people to catch up. Even if you're 3 months late, you should be able to catch up pretty easily because there's only one lecture session per month. It meets every fourth Sunday of the month, every month of the year, with discussions on the third Sunday. And those discussions are about the readings, but they're also about our personal research related to Timenergy and Critical Doxology. Critical Doxology, obviously this is just the study of common sense, but doing it critically. And so I have Joe Rogan and Oprah Winfrey up on the screen there. Why do I have them under ideology? It's not because I think that they're ideologues. I actually don't. I genuinely do not believe that either of them is an ideologue. I think that what makes them work is that they're not ideologues. Like they care a lot more about people and understanding people than they do about promoting something particular, right? Like they care a lot more about understanding, and maybe they care more about being perceived as though they understand, right? Like, or care or want to understand people. It could just be their prolificity, but let's just accept it for what it is. I think the authenticity question is stupid. Let's set that aside and just say they care about understanding people. That's what their brand is. But they have reading lists, and on the reading lists is a lot of self-help, business success, woke memoirs, and general hustle and grind set material that I would say forms the actual substratum of capitalist ideology in this era, from left to right, from PMC to petty bourgeois rhetoric, and we'll be working through some of their essential sources and bringing it into dialogue with thinkers like Aristotle, Kant, Bergson, Nietzsche, Marx, Heidegger, Adorno, Lacan, Byung-Chul Han, critique, critical theory, and doing so kind of from the Timenergy standpoint, which is to say, thinking from the standpoint of as working class people who have finite time and energy, who never have in our weeks large energy infused repeatable blocks of time, what are people telling us is the solution, the grand solution to our problems? And like, what's the baby in the bathwater that we want to honor, dignify, but also what are they missing, right? And that kind of critical engagement with this kind of material doesn't exist. It never has existed. Nobody in critical theory has ever done it, to my knowledge. This kind of connection, taking on the Oprah Winfrey reading list or the Joe Rogan reading list and doing it seriously from the standpoint of high theory, has never been done, and it needs to be done. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to be the ones to do it so you can get in on the ground floor of something exciting and unique that will also coincidentally help you think about your priorities and the life that you're building and how to do it better, but also help you critique the people who are kind of bludgeoning you with that kind of bullshit. So we kind of get to have our cake and eat it too. Anything you want to say and close about that?
Yeah, I think it's awesome to come at, I don't know, this pop culture stuff and take it seriously and dignify it. Not everyone, the majority of people in my life have this, like they react when someone presents themselves as an intellectual or an academic or a philosopher or whatever. They're like, well, fuck that guy. That guy sucks. Because most of those guys do suck, because most of those guys shit all over this when it shouldn't be shitted on. It makes up so much of the content, so much of the meaningful content of people's everyday lives. And to just immediately dismiss it and say, well, yeah, but we know that's all foolish. Fuck those people. So to dignify it, to take it seriously, I think is hugely important. And yeah, people aren't doing that, and they're missing the point.
Yeah, no, they would rather go talk about ideology in Moby Dick, talk about ideology in James Joyce, talk about ideology in the TV show Friends, or like whatever. They don't care about the kind of ideology that actually shapes that participates most crucially in the reconstruction of subjectivity at those points of subjective destitution, when people are going through radical change and trying to take personal responsibility for their radical change, right? You're going to get like Dale Carnegie, Covey, 7 Habits of a Highly Effective Guy, or Brene Brown. Like, these people are so much more fundamental for how we restructure ourselves in times of crisis than the TV show Friends, or fucking something written
Casablanca, the like movies no one's ever seen, books no one's ever read, orchestral concert music that no one fucking listens to. Like, yeah, that's all fun and sure, it serves its purpose, but it's just doing the ivory tower, jerking yourself off thing. Right.
And that's a passive dig at Slavoj, is it not? Like, this is a...
Yeah.
But the thing is like, we can appreciate Slavoj for breaking the dam in a sort of sense, because everyone wants him to shut up and not do pop culture or vulgar culture. And I say everyone academics. They don't like this mixture of high theory and the vulgar cultural artifacts. And so Žižek has been instrumental in breaking that dam, that barrier. We're just taking it to the next logical step. We're saying, yes, he's right to take it to the vulgar, but he's not taking it far enough, because he's not going to those vulgar things that are most instrumental in actually grounding people out during times of crisis. He's the thinker of interpassivity. So of course, this is the kinds of stuff that people watch interpassively, like these kinds of shows. And of course, it's advantageous for him to focus this way, because film studies itself cares more about theory than philosophy circles or political science circles or economic circles. And so if it's like Byung-Chul Han choosing artists as his audience. Žižek early on chose film studies as his audience, and that's great. But there's not a institution in academia that we could pander to for this much more deeply ideological level of I don't know what to call it. It's not research, but it's just like it is a discourse. Yeah.
And it's such a dominant discourse. Like it dominates social media. It dominates these moments of crisis, when you're in jail, when you're going through bereavement, when you've lost your job, when you're getting a divorce, like all these moments in your lives that are so impactful. And also, that's all there really is all over social media, like all over the thing that is most invasive in our daily lives. It's all, I mean, not all, but the stuff that people take seriously is this self-help grind set type content. So it's like, yeah, this is where the rubber meets the road, this stuff. And people are ignoring it because they're just saying, oh, I don't care. It's stupid. It's too vulgar.
Right. And I think that's, let's analyze that really quickly. In yourself, you hate this kind of writing. Like the Comfort Crisis book, as an example, it's just driving you crazy while you're reading it. Or Orland Claff's Pitch Anything. You're just getting triggered, right? You're not reading it like in this critical theoretical way. You're reading it in this fucking sucks. This is annoying. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
Way. And so I kind of want to give you an opportunity to speak to that, because I think that you're representative of the tendency. This is the tendency. Like that is how everyone feels when you love quality texts that challenge you. And then someone's like, you gotta read this, man. And they give you this thing and you start reading it and you're like, fuck, dude. So you want to elaborate on your position?
Yeah, I think, there's definitely multiple levels to it. I think, I don't know, maybe the first level is I want to think of myself as smart in quotations, right? And so I'm just like, I'm doing the thing. I'm that's an affectation where it's like, oh, well, this is too lowbrow for me. What do you mean too lowbrow for me? I spent 6 years of my life cleaning toilets covered in human poop. Like, I don't know if you can get much more lowbrow than that. But there's that. But then there's also, and maybe it's just something I like to tell myself, but I feel like I could do this better. I don't want people to continue being taken advantage of, because I feel like the overwhelming majority of these texts are taking advantage of their audience. I've seen it in my family and my friends where they latch on to these texts and they think, this is it. I found the missing piece and now my life will be complete. And that, I don't like seeing that. That hurts me. It often damages their life later down the road when they're confronted with the fact that they didn't find the missing piece. And so for the last year or 2 or 3 years, they thought they were doing everything right. And then they find themselves in this place of this moment of failure. And that's painful for them. And that pisses me off, because I think, no, I could do what these texts claim to be doing. I could actually do that. I could actually say true, worthwhile things to the masses. That's something I could do. And then even with that, like, so there's this element of jealousy, but there's also, I do believe that I genuinely do care, and I get pissed off because it's like, stop doing it, because I'm like, oh, well, that's capital. That's the market. That's these people who are distinguishing themselves and pushing their narrative for their own self-benefit. And I don't like to see that. So it is very charged. But I trust us. I do trust us and the other people that are going to be involved. I trust our intentions and I trust our abilities to get it done right, because it does matter.
And partially this is coming out of our experiences with the critical media theory research cohort, where we have been bringing in popular works into dialogue with high theory. And so the sparks that fly when you bring these things together, I think it provokes thinking on our own. And it also helps us ground out in the real common sense of our society. Like I've said this elsewhere, but like Judith Butler as an example, it never tells you what her sources are for her conception of American common sense. For instance, maybe she might make a reference to the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, or something like that. Let's just imagine that she does. But did she ever do a sustained critical engagement with it? No, it's more like brought up as a sort of like, oh yeah, that's so passe. We know that's dumb. And it's like this in-group reifying thing. Instead of like, but where's the book by Butler that is the sequel to Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? Where's the actual sequel? Like, why aren't critical theorists writing critical sequels to these mainstay cultural texts? So for instance, like the Courage to Grow by Brene Brown, you know, being sold to us as like the solution. I know so many people who go through this phase of maybe they went through some kind of a breakup and now they're trying to get their life together. And they're just like, oh, I've got to be, my problem in my relationship was that I was not vulnerable enough. And then they go into a new relationship and now they're super vulnerable thanks to Brene Brown. And what that turns into is a new set of frustrations on top of the old ones because their ideal of perfection, against which their drive always undermines or sets itself against, now has this ideal standard of like this long form, ongoing meta vulnerability and dialogue in all relationships all of the time. And nobody has the time energy for it. And so if you ever respond to a person who's in the Brene Brown headspace in an impatient way, it's violence. It's now it's violence, and you're an abuser because you just are busy and like on your shit. Like, and it's like, so that creates a new problem because it's created this unrealistic expectation of what you need to do, which should be so easy, which will then solve all your problems. And of course, because it doesn't solve all your problems, you think it's either your fault or you think it's these other people's fault for not playing along. The exact same thing is true with Rosenberg's. Is that his name? I don't think that's his name. The nonviolence communication guy. The NVC. So nonviolent communication goes right along with this sort of Brene Brown thing. And it's, you know, it's this ideal speech model that people start to measure themselves against and think will be the grand solution to end war, to end poverty, to end, you know, class division, to end relational dysfunction. And it also assumes unlimited time energy. It is a model based in, oh, we've got the time and the energy to be able to marshal all of our resources and focus on the relationship. Now, coming from him, that makes sense because he was like mediating actual conflict between nation states. So but the thing is like, yeah, it was his full-time job. The people he was mediating between, it was their full-time job to show up and actually be in that space. But then he takes that and puts that in the domestic relationship. He puts that between roommates, between lovers, between coworkers, between employees and managers. Simon Sinek with his whole approach to leading from behind and, you know, why don't managers tell their employees that they love them kind of bullshit. Like, he's also bringing this in. Now, I'm bringing in Simon Sinek, Brene Brown. Can you look up the nonviolent communication guy?
It's Rosenberg, Michael Rosenberg.
Okay, so I was right. Yes. Okay, so Rosenberg. These are examples of the more left PMC side of the spectrum when it comes to this self-help business success worldview. You could, on that same left side, put is his name Young Pueblo? Let me just double check. Young Pueblo. Yeah, it is Young Pueblo. His real name is Diego Perez, but he wrote a book called Inward. And, you know, he's got millions of followers on Instagram because he makes these really short, little, thoughtful, succinct daily reminders for people to keep their head straight. You know, it's just like mental, it's mental and I don't want to say endurance, but it's like little, basically poems or haikus or little, he condenses ancient wisdom into like these little pithy or thought-provoking or, you know, beautiful statements. And it's right in line with all of these other thinkers that are on the left PMC rhetorical side of this spectrum. On the right side, though, is obviously the subtle art of not giving a fuck, the how to win friends and influence people, 7 habits of highly effective people, atomic habits, right? And so, yeah, but this is these are the books that people turn to, and these are the books that hurt people the most. Like they have their grains of truth. They wouldn't work if they didn't have their grains of truth. A lot of those grains of truths are ones that they've actually monopolized because critical theory people either think it's so obvious it's not worth talking about, or they think it's so ideological. Oh, you can't say that because if you say, oh yeah, you got to take responsibility. Well, what that leads to is Reaganism and victim blaming. And they have like this whole idea of what that leads to, but they can never just like sublate the kernel of truth into their own project. And so, which gives a monopoly on certain truths to these kinds of people. So yeah, I wanted to turn the end of this session into a plug for critical doxology and Timenergy because it's coming up quickly. It's going to begin on the 4th Sunday of January. And I just hope that you will all get in there. I want to see some people sign up for it. And the best way to be a part of it is by becoming a tier 2 or higher subscriber at Theory Underground through the app or through the website, or paying for the course itself. Just get in there, join us. It's going to be interesting. And it's building up to the conference, which will be in October 2024. And so the research you're doing there builds up to presentations and papers that can ultimately potentially get into an actual anthology. And who knows, maybe you'll actually be able to be a part of our 21st Century Council of Nicaea event, which we talked about that with Cadell. That's the only place that we've announced this, but because I'm going to re-release this segment as a standalone video. Did you see that? Do you know what I'm talking about? This 21st Century Council of Nicaea event?
Yeah, kind of coming together and I don't know, discovering what the core concepts and like the key doxa are of our current situation. To then be able to critique it, but like first finding out what is worth tarrying with, what is worth sifting through.
Right. Like what are the essential texts of 21st century actual scripture? And when we say actual scripture, we're not saying the actual truth or the actual true gospel. We're saying from the standpoint of our culture, what are the essential texts? Can we, for instance, take the 48 laws of power and the subtle art of not giving a fuck and say those are derivative and downstream from these more essential texts? And then we could say, well, but are they essential popularizations of those other texts? And then in the longer run, it'd be nice to be able to say, what are the core assumptions of this left PMC to right petty bourgeois, spectrum of rhetoric and ideology? Like what would be the central assumptions that make them different, but then what would be the central assumptions that make them the same, and source that where are the actual like sort of lodestones or like linchpins of that in these texts. Like Tony Robbins has obviously played this tremendous role in popularizing the right petty bourgeois side of the equation, right? Well, even if he's not essential in this originary sense, then he's an essential popularizer. And so then we have to figure that out.
He's a key figure.
Yeah. And then the Council of Nicaea metaphor. Well, what is the metaphor? Because I think that a lot of people that one probably just goes over their head, right?
So I think it was the 3rd century of the Common Era. The leaders of the nascent Catholicism came together in Nicaea and had a council to decide what would be canonized into the Bible. So before the Council of Nicaea, there were hundreds of books that constituted the corpus of Christian scripture, and then the Council of Nicaea. And actually, I think it was a sequential one. Like there were multiple councils of Nicaea that when we say the Council of Nicaea, we refer to one that I think might have been the third or maybe the second. I don't know. But before that, there were hundreds of books in the Old and New Testaments, and they came together and said, what describes our narrative and what doesn't? What do we need to cast off? And so I don't know if anyone's heard of like the Nag Hammadi Library or the Dead Sea Scrolls or this Hidden Gospel of Thomas, or like there's tons of books that are apocryphal or heretical that weren't always apocryphal or heretical.
Right.
And
like the book of Judas,
they came together.
Judas, like I've seen people posting about the book of Judas or whatever. And it's like, well, why is that not in the Bible? Because of the Council of Nicaea it's like, okay, it's kind of like nowadays. It's like the internet. It's the dark age. Mm-hmm. It's the TMI. Yeah. It's the dark age of TMI. Too much information, too many conflicting narratives, too much, like no cohesion. And nobody has agreed upon social reference points for their culture texts. And you can say, well, they wanted to capture the whole scene. They wanted to capture the scene by institutionalizing the ones they saw valid and then saying the other ones were heretical, which ultimately, because this was all put together by the Roman emperor Constantine, that could result in like, oh, if you're out here teaching heretical texts defined as heretical simply because they're not included, then maybe you could be killed, or maybe you could be punished somehow, or maybe your status as a priest or a church or whatever, it gets revoked. And so it's like, it is gatekeeping in this like strong sense. But the difference between then and now, between that dark age and this dark age, this is something we got into with Cadell, is twofold. Now we got into the second one with Cadell, but what I want to point out, we didn't get into this at the time, is that the biggest difference is that Christianity, as well as just all like traditional religions, at the point that they really have to articulate themselves and say, this is what's in and that's all what's out, are very different from capitalist ideology, which functions by not telling you have to believe it. You don't have to believe it. You can do whatever you want. You can just go to whatever life coach, whatever woke memoir, whatever grind, set, hustle, business success literature you want to, but you as an individual have to figure out how to keep getting back to work on time. You as an individual have to find a way to love it. You as an individual have to find a way to valorize yourself. And so there's a billion things out there to help you towards that end. And you feel free because you have the free choice to kind of direct yourself ideologically. The point is that it needs to ultimately reincorporate you back into the same thing. And so just like the PMC is the class that benefits most by not thinking of itself as a class, and that's an essential function in the reproduction of capital today, this ideology works best when it's not ideology at all. And part of what makes it not ideology is that there's not a church for it. There's not a church for self-help, hustle, grind, whatever. There's not a church you can go to where they're just like, yeah, it's Tony Robbins this week, and then it's Covey next week, and then it's Carnegie. No, they're not going to say that. Instead, it's going to be your manager actually saying, oh yeah, you might want to check out this book. Or it might be your coworker who says, oh yeah, this one really helped me through 12 Rules for Life. That really helped me get there. Or
your favorite influencer who empowers you and makes you believe that you are working for your utmost when in reality, you're not.
Yeah, the influencer who's selling you on Brene Brown and how much this changed their life or whatever, right? Or it could be Joe Rogan or, Oprah Winfrey. So yeah, this is its power is by remaining apparently non-ideological, apparently having no direct ties to the war machine, apparently having no ties to, say, naturalizing the turning everything solid into air for the sake of capital valorization, this ultimate reduction of all useful things and relationships to the sign of exchange, right? Like that is all something that benefits from not being recognized as. Now, what was the other thing? We talked about it with Cadell, the other difference between then and now. Do you remember off the top of your head? Because I do, but I want to see if you do.
Was it that? I'm trying to remember.
It's CMT.
Then Cadell and I talked about how fucked we are. Was it that we're fucked?
No, it's the CMT angle. It's the CMT angle. Because obviously they were fucked in the Dark Ages too.
Okay, yeah.
No, it's just that the media conditions themselves have changed so radically. Yeah. Right. And so it's like at the Council of Nicaea, you have a handful of elites selected by an emperor who are supposed to put this thing together. As opposed to, and I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. I'm just saying like that was necessary because of the mode of communication at the time. The media conditions obviously changed with the Protestant Reformation based in the printing press, right? So what would the Council of Nicaea look like after the printing press? It wouldn't. It can't. There can be never again can there be that kind of centralization of ideology. It just will never work again. In fact, at this point, we're at what seems, this going back to the first point, the extreme semblance of rhizomatic, dispersed, non-centralization of ideology. When in fact, subtending all of the literature is a certain set of assumptions and a certain
couldn't be more complete.
And a certain
couldn't
function.
be more complete because of that illusion of actual distributed communication that's happening is what makes it total. So confronting the fact that nothing is really happening is, I think it's radical. Like,
and doing it in the context of the critical media theory research that is going on at Theory Underground. So if you're a tier 1 subscriber, then you already have access to the critical media theory stuff. We meet every second Sunday of the month, and the discussions for that happens on the first Sunday. So some people are going to be at tier 2, 3, 4 and be engaged at this level where they're doing the CMT shit and they're doing the Timenergy shit. And so kind of having that context there, having that dialogue there, is going to be useful because, we are in this neo-dark age, ushering in the neo-feudal age or whatever the fuck. But the changed conditions of the PMC, of the media context, of all of this allows people to think of themselves as literate when they're not. Like back then, the priests who were getting together and actually doing the Council of Nicaea project, they were the only reading people, like them and their monks or whatever, like, and their scribes, like they were the only reading people there. The broader public it wasn't literate at all, right? And so it was like nonsensical. Like, of course they had to do that. But now, of course we have this idea of specialists and experts who are supposed to, ultimately you're responsible for subscribing to the correct ones or whatever. Like there is that idea there, but also we have this idea that we're all literate now and that we're all capable of doing this on our own, which is a sort of like Protestant ideal that we have, but of course no one can read. But of course we're functionally illiterate. Of course we don't have the time energy to genuinely contextualize any of the books that we've mentioned so far. All of the books that we've mentioned so far, if a person's reading it and it's the first real book that they've seriously read that's nonfiction in, say, 10 years, maybe they're in prison, maybe they're going through a breakup, divorce, death in the family, lost one, whatever it is, and they're reading it seriously now because they are functionally illiterate, because they are structurally stultified of their time energy, it's going to read as a transparent. Like they only see what's on the page. They can't see the decisions that were made to get what's on the page there. They don't understand the context within which it functions discursively. And so That's the kind of stuff that we'll be getting into. We really hope that you will all be able to join us because it's going to be a great time.
Yeah, it's going to be the shit.
All right, cool. Let's cut this thing off. Hope to see you all there. Peace.
Peace.
Thinking is super uncool, and that's why you should do it. It's just like almost anything that's like cool anymore. Yeah, it just sucks. And I think that's like what the underground movement has always been about, is just like seeing what's in the mainstream, being like, it ain't there, and kind of like cobbling something together, you know? And yeah, it's a little mismatched, but that's like its beauty.
We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Welcome to Theory Underground, where workers with earbuds can find genuine liberation from necessity.
Research at Theory Underground focuses on what is most important for understanding our current situation: theory of the subject, capital, time-energy theory, critical media theory, CMT, and the most essential critiques necessary for understanding why the theory, ideology, and common sense of influencers left to right misses the mark.
We bring primary texts from leading lights of diverse fields to bear on topical issues and works popular in our current world. Theory Underground is a publishing house as well as lecture course and social media platform.
You've been reading Underground Theory.
Yes.
And
amazing book. I'm a publisher and an editor. I run a review of books. Literally, it's my living. This is the best edited collection I've ever read.
Jesus Christ.
Seriously.
This is a little experiment in what I, David McKerracher, can pull off without relying on the academy or the algorithmic dictates of the attention economy.
Usually, a good edited collection has good essays, but you only want to read a few. Every essay makes me want to read the other essays because you have a vision. Everyone that you invited for a reason. You weren't some fake publicist who's like, "How's so-and-so's a new book? Have them on your show." No, you only talk to people because you've read shit by them that you've thought about, that you think has value, even if you disagree. So I think that's what's amazing.
I believe that I am, like so many others, pioneering a future in which educators can form learning webs that will make learning as a way of life enjoyable and emancipatory. However, before these tools become accessible, they have to be experimented with. That's why I built my own website and app using nothing more than my own saved wages, 5 patrons, and some small classes of students over the last year. Of course, I also have had my wife Anne's moral support and help with accounting so that I don't get in trouble with the IRS or whatever. In less than a year, Theory Underground has already put out 8 courses, 2 books, one, my book, Timenergy, and the other, Underground Theory, which has over 30 contributors, including works written by students at Theory Underground, some of my fellow travelers, and colleagues in the broader universe of underground theory. Beyond the books and courses, though, you will also find interviews, reading exegetical reaction sessions, and live weekly events for working class autodidacts, independent researchers, and renegade academics. These include a variety of clubs and cohorts that meet on a weekly or monthly basis. If you want to get involved, there are 4 main subscription levels.
Think of it like a gym membership, but for your mind.
The point is to make learning, practice, and theoretical comprehension a way of life. Support at this stage of the operation is more crucial than ever because my savings were used up over the last year of getting this established. If I can triple my subscribers in the next 2 months, I can quit my gig at Amazon and focus on this work full time. All I need is a few more people at each of the levels or a couple big time patrons who just want to see it happen. Right now I am doing a patron and site subscriber drive, so excuse the commercial. But if you end up really liking what goes on at this channel, consider signing up soon. If you cannot afford it, but want to get involved with some of the stuff behind the paywall, I have made a financial aid scholarship you can sign up for here in the description. Quick side note, some people ask about the profit motive. At this point, I have not actually made a return on any of my investment in terms of the amount of time energy that I put into things, the amount of savings I've actually put into things, the opportunity cost of the work that I'm doing as opposed to the other kinds of things that I could be doing for money. But more importantly, I don't actually make enough to pay for my cost of living. The goal is to make enough for my cost of living. And then once that is achieved, everything over that amount is going to go towards expanding the operation to the point where I can hire Michael Downs, aka Mikey of The Dangerous Maybe, to be a full-time researcher and part-time teacher at Theory Underground. All right, so with that aside, I just want to say also, if you are a worker with earbuds, what's up? I see you. I work at Amazon part-time, and everything I do is for my past self who used to work there full-time. Most workers with earbuds couldn't care less about theory, but I do believe a working class intellectual revolution could grow out of the underground theory scene. My hope is that what I have built here will contribute to making the scene something more than just a scene, and you into something more than just a scene kid. We're trying to make this into a real intellectual milieu capable of leading a way forward beyond the imminent crises facing humanity. But for that, we need thinking now more than ever.
Start thinking.
I hope that you either will or have enjoyed the program, and also make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and leave this playing in the background all the time while you're doing other things.
Playing long-form Theory Underground content in the background while you do things has, in the near future, been scientifically proven to emancipate minds from the functional illiteracy imposed on workers by the structural stultification of time energy. This is achieved by reterritorializing circumspective concern.
Also, to some degree, it is for the algorithm.
Think of it like a gym membership, but for your mind!
I love you so much.
I love you too.